How will Canada fight the trade war and get the economy back on its feet? Big projects. The phrase of the day is nation building. And the country's premiers? They know which way the wind is blowing.
Thankfully, New Brunswick is bursting with opportunities.
And in Nunavut's case, we're very excited to really see projects like the Arctic Security Corridor, which is Grays Bay Road and Port.
Infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, and specifically the road to the Ring of Fire.
Big projects are back in the national conversation. So is it just talk, or could it be something more? Hi, I'm Paul Habershood. Welcome to The Cost of Living. Right now, the spirit to build big things seems willing. And Ottawa says the economic stakes could not be higher. So is nation building just a grand-sounding slogan, or is this country about to go on a building spree? Also today, true love. It's your soul's recognition of its counterpoint in another. It means you share everything. But does that always have to include your bank account? Up first, I have a secret. So do you. So does every Canadian. It's 9 digits long, and we don't share it with anyone. Right? Blair Sanderson, let me ask you this. How closely do you guard your social insurance number?
Paul, I don't even know my social insurance number. You know, if you were to catch me talking in my sleep, it's not coming out.
Perfect. Guarded then.
Yeah, and that's, what our SIN number is supposed to be. Private.
It's the most sensitive, secret, and unique identifier. Essentially, it's the master key to our identity.
That is Claudio Popa, co-founder of Canada's Cyber Safety Foundation.
He just called it the master key to our identity, which, feels a wee ominous.
Well, he's trying to make a point here, right? He's on a mission to make people smarter about what your SIN is actually for.
So what is it actually for then?
Well, it was invented with the launch of the Canada Pension Plan in the 1960s. Bureaucrats needed a new number to keep track of every Canadian eligible for the CPP.
So our SIN numbers are only like 60 years old.
Yeah, 60 years young. But over that time, the use of the number has spread, and not just across different government departments either.
So what's supposed to be our super secret number kind of gets around?
Yeah, Claudio Popa calls this functionality creep. It's when something designed for one thing ends up being used for a bunch of other stuff. And he says functionality creep is happening big time with social insurance numbers.
Landlords are frequently requesting these things. Retailers and service providers are doing it. In some cases, schools and camps. Insurance companies don't need to have your social insurance number, and yet they do it.
So if they don't need them, who do we need to give our SIN numbers to?
It's actually a pretty short list. When you get a job, your employer needs it. Your bank is another example, getting a loan, things like that. And then, of course, government departments like the Canada Revenue Agency. But as we just heard, all kinds of companies are collecting it too. And here's the thing, they're allowed to ask you for it, but that doesn't mean you have to give it to them.
All right, sure, but then why do they want it?
Well, it's an easy way to check your credit history to see if you pay your bills. And remember, your SIN is like a snowflake, right? No two are alike. And Claudio Popa says that makes them useful to businesses that have to keep track of lots of customers.
So when somebody is asked to store information on a customer, they need to find some way of attaching a number to that customer. And it has just become a lazy way of uniquely identifying people.
So your SIN number makes their life easier.
Yeah, it's a number that's more unique than even your birth date or your name. And companies like that because there's no worry about getting customers mixed up. So yeah, it's great for companies. But for that same reason, it is not good if it falls into the wrong hands. And that's why you really need to think twice before sharing it.
Well, let's say that happens. The bad guys get it. What can they do with it?
Just about anything. With your SIN and a few other details about you, someone can open a bank account in your name, take out a loan, file fraudulent tax returns, and claim employment benefits or disability claims.
Do we have any sense of how often this might happen?
Well, we do know millions of Canadians have had their data breached, and often that includes SIN numbers. Just over the past year and a half, we've seen employee or customer info stolen from Sobeys, Ticketmaster, London Drugs, the Canada Revenue Agency. The list goes on. One of the biggest data breaches happened about 6 years ago to Desjardins, the financial services company in Quebec. 4 million Canadian account holders were affected, including this guy we're calling Dave.
I saw it online and I saw it on the news and I said, wow, this is pretty serious. Shortly thereafter, I was notified by the bank via mail that my information was compromised in the leak.
Now, Dave is not his real name. Police have actually told him it's not a good idea to be splashing his name around now that his identity's been compromised. He lives in Montreal, and his social insurance number was indeed stolen in that leak.
Well, after that happened, how did things go for him?
Well, since the breach, he's been the victim of several identity fraud attempts. Last year, someone opened a bank account in his name with his credentials.
They just wanted access to credit. I was later notified by the police because clearly when somebody uses your ID fraudulently, there's a whole process you need to go through. But what the perpetrators intended to do was just be able to access money quickly.
And after that, he says there was another fraud attempt at a different bank. And just a couple of months ago, he says someone used his identity to buy multiple iPhones online.
So this one breach has been dogging him for like the last 6 years.
Yeah, and he's had to spend all this time, cooperating with police and the banks. He did get 5 years of free credit monitoring, but criminals often know when that monitoring expires. Dave says the fraud attempt against him happened about 5 years after the breach.
It's frustrating. It's frustrating knowing that your information is on the dark web. It will be used again.
The dark web, where the criminals live.
Yeah, basically the online black market for things like your SIN. And once it's on the dark web, it is out there. And that's why some of the people affected by the Desjardins breach started demanding the government give them new social insurance numbers.
Is that something that's even possible?
Technically, yes. But Service Canada says it is really complicated. Your SIN is linked to a lot of government services. Changing it can actually create more problems.
All right, but let's say something like your credit card number gets hacked. You can change your credit card. You can swap that out, get a new number. We're in a digital world now, right? Like, could there be more flexibility around our SIN numbers?
SIN numbers aren't like credit cards. They're not designed to expire or to be changed. The only way you can get a new one is if you can prove it was used to commit fraud. Just the fact that it was stolen is not enough. It's very rare the government will actually issue you a new number. And that's why there is a push right now to move to another kind of ID system, a futuristic digital ID.
What would something like that look like?
Well, it would be a system that allows you to share only what you want and nothing else. I talked to Joni Brennan about this. She's with the Digital ID and Authentication Council of Canada.
You might have something like a digital wallet that's in your phone or in your smart tablet. And within that digital wallet, for example, you would have those pieces of information like your verified income could be one example. And then you would be able to share that information that the person or organization is asking for on the other side.
What she describes there, Blair, is that anywhere close to happening?
Yeah, people like Joni are working on it, but it's slow going. Canada is jurisdictionally complicated, with the provinces having a lot of power over credentials. So digital ID will likely roll out in dribs and drabs rather than all at once.
Okay, and as it rolls out over the years, what happens?
Bottom line, people need to know their rights. If your phone company or utility asks for your SIN, cybersecurity experts say resist handing it over. If you're not sure, ask questions. Why do you want this? What are you going to do with it? What else can I give you instead?
So guard that puppy zealously.
Yeah, guard it zealously, fervently, passionately, and know the risks if you do share it.
All right. Thanks, Blair.
You're welcome.
On your Radio NY podcast, this is The Cost of Living. I'm Paul Habershood. It's easy to see why they say never mix money and friendship. A buddy doesn't pay back a loan, you call them a deadbeat, and you don't hang out so much anymore. So that's friendship. But what about love? Is the path to a happy relationship mixing your money together or keeping it apart?
Sarah Remacher was in her 30s when she moved in with her future husband, Sean. They both had good jobs, and from the start, they split everything right down the middle.
You know, the grocery bill came in and we just did 50-50. So what we kind of did is at the end of every month, we would sort of add up all the expenses, who paid for what, and then we'd figure out what the difference was.
Now they have a shared account for bills, vacations, and dinners out. But everything else, they keep to themselves.
We each came into the relationship with different amounts of money. And so, no, actually, we never talked about putting all of our money into one account.
Sarah and Sean are like a lot of Canadian couples who are vowing to have money of their own and to hold it in separate accounts.
I think that is fair to say. That's the current trends do indicate that. And we know that 3 in 10 Canadians don't share a bank account or a credit card with their partner at all.
Nicole Ewing is with Wealth Planning at TD. Every year, the bank surveys Canadian couples about their money habits. She says the younger you are, the less likely you are to combine your assets in a joint account. You're more likely to take this approach.
I'm prepared to have things commingled for the shared goals within our relationship, but I want to maintain my independence. I want to maintain perhaps some privacy and be able to make choices about my money that are separate.
Leslie Ann Scorgie sees this all the time. She's a financial advisor in Toronto. Leslie Ann says couples are getting together later in life than they used to.
So they've been working for a few years. They may have work pensions. They may have their own RSPs, tax-free savings accounts. And so they're coming into their own fresh relationship, looking at their partner and saying, well, I've kind of got this going already.
She says separate bank accounts can work out great, as long as you have a shared budget and you're honest about how much money is coming in and going out. But there are some other things for couples to consider, like having multiple bank accounts can get complicated.
I've actually seen couples come to me with like a total of like 50 different accounts, 50. Yeah. You know, accounts for the dog, accounts for everything, every nook and cranny, there's an account for it.
And those accounts don't come free. When it comes to banking, Leslie Ann says less is more.
Fewer, more strategic accounts is typically the most helpful for couples to help streamline their efforts, reduce the amount of fees that they're paying, and make it more transparent and easier to track.
And then there's your retirement plan. You may want to keep your investments separate, but there are advantages to pooling your assets and investing with a larger pot of money.
There have been some studies in recent years that have suggested couples that jointly share a financial plan and have their accounts under one household, they end up retiring with 2 to 3 times more money.
Sarah Remacher says she's happy with the setup she has with her husband. They save together, spend the rest however they want, and most importantly, they never fight about money.
when he came home and was like, oh, I just bought like a brand new car. I'm like, that's wonderful. I can be excited for him. He didn't need to ask my permission because that's how he's choosing to spend that.
For the Cost of Living, I'm Jennifer Keane.
Coming up next week, we're heading to the Midway. You ever try to beat the ring toss? Knock over the milk bottle pyramid? Throw a ball into one of those stupid baskets? Let's just say winning can be expensive and hard to do. Although, not according to carnival workers.
This year's Calgary Stampede, we will give away 35 tractor-trailer loads of stuffed animals. So I'm going to tell you that somebody is winning these games. In fact, I think that we can give away enough stuffed animals so we could fill the Saddle Dome 16 times for Flames games if you were to put a teddy bear in every seat. So are our games winnable? You bet.
Step right up. Next week, we look at what it takes in dollars and skill to win that little teddy bear on the Midway. This is The Cost of Living. Listen to us on CBC Radio 1 or wherever you get your podcasts. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Listen to a Canadian politician these days, and there's a good chance you'll hear the words
nation-building projects.
Because
Canada is a country that used to build big things.
We can't build anything in this country. It's hurting the economy. Other countries are passing us by. We've heard that from industry for years. And now, Ottawa's listening. Building big things is back on the menu. And anyone with a big project, like provincial premiers, is licking their chops.
Thankfully, New Brunswick is bursting with opportunities.
And in Nunavut's case, we're very excited to really see projects like the Arctic Security Corridor, which is Grays Bay Road and Port.
Infrastructure, roads, bridges, highways, and specifically the road to the Ring of Fire.
That road Doug Ford just mentioned? It's a 200-kilometer stretch of highway to get at critical minerals in Northern Ontario. It's been on the drawing board for 15 years. So will big projects like that come off the back burner and actually get built? The feds say it's about to happen. They're pushing the Building Canada Act through Parliament at warp speed. It's part of Bill C-5. It would let the federal cabinet bypass statutes and fast-track industrial projects. Go back even 6 months, and this is a pretty seismic shift from where we were. Just like that, anyone with a major project is now front and center, and many are ready to dream big.
Our vision, is really that we are a major port in Canada, and that's akin to Vancouver or Montreal or Halifax.
Chris Avery is the head of the Arctic Gateway Group. It owns the Port of Churchill on the Hudson Bay. It's a working port. It's been around since the 1930s, but you wouldn't exactly call it bustling. Churchill, population 900, is 1,000 kilometers north of Winnipeg. No roads go in and out, but it does have the Hudson Bay Railway. It runs south from Churchill until it meets up with the CN rail line, which then plugs it into the rest of Canada. That connection is why Chris thinks his little-known northern port fits the bill for nation building.
Here's a great set of trade-enabling infrastructure that allows the vast resources we have in Western Canada access to global markets in Europe, in Africa, in the Middle East, even South America, and also better connects us to our northern territories in central Nunavut.
The Port of Churchill could offer another way for Canada to get our stuff into the world, and one that doesn't rely on the U.S.
For a country the size of Canada, to give ourselves the optionality to also have a northern port makes sense. We'll never replace the Port of Vancouver or the Port of Montreal, but it will provide us an option and another outlet to get to Tidewater. The biggest Trump lesson is we can't put our eggs into the US market. We can't just be dependent on them.
The port could do what he says. But the Hudson Bay is also locked up with ice for half the year. So he knows developing the port isn't a slam dunk. It would take convincing customers that shipping from a northern port is a viable option. They'd need to build new wharfs, secure financing. At this stage, the Arctic Gateway Group would like a couple of things from Ottawa. Funding for icebreakers to open up the shipping season in the Hudson Bay, and a faster approval process. They'll need to build a lot of stuff to make the port a go. But if ever there was a time to take a big swing, Chris thinks it's now.
Infrastructure is an investment, and it takes time to build up. But once you have it, you have it. So, the visions of building the railway across Canada continues to pay dividends today on a vision that was hundreds of years ago.
The Port of Churchill is being pitched as part of a proposed energy corridor. It would run from the BC coast, across the northern part of the western provinces, to the Hudson Bay. It could include high-voltage electricity, pipelines, fiber optic cables. It'd be a kind of one-stop shop to move resources, electricity, data across the country. Now, this would be a huge undertaking. But countrywide, projects like that are now hoping to strike while the nation-building iron is hot. New hydro generation, mining, port expansions are all lining up saying, pick me. But they also know we can only build so much at one time, and that the clock is ticking.
I would argue right now we have a 2 to 3 year window to get this done, to diversify our markets.
Jay Khosla is the head of economic policy for the Public Policy Forum. He's also the co-author of a new report called Build Big Things. He thinks we need to take this moment as a wake-up call. The trade war is lighting a fire, but that flame could go out. Trump won't be in office forever. And Canadians have goods and resources that Americans want, so that gravitational pull of the U.S. market will always be there.
It's easy for us to fall back and say, yeah, the economy's working okay. Canadians aren't living a life of poverty. They're not living a life of like hand to mouth, just generally. But, this next 2 to 3 year window, we can do a lot quickly to ensure that we have leverage. This is all about leverage at the end of the day with new markets.
Infrastructure to move stuff around the country, expanding ports to get it into the world. This is what Jay thinks we need to do to develop new customers and make ourselves less vulnerable to the U.S. So we need to diversify our economy. But that's not the only reason he thinks we have to go on a building spree.
Our gross domestic product trajectory over the last decade has been almost dead last in the OECD. That means that our growth rate, our economic prospects are low. And so as a result of that, you have to look at where can you boost those things. The answer has to be that projects are part of that. And it's one of the fastest ways to boost economic prospects. If you do get those projects up and going, you can boost GDP up to about 4.5%, 5%. That's huge. There's not much else that can do that.
GDP growth of 5%. That's more than double where we are now. It is a big leap. So how could building big projects juice the economy by that much?
These projects are massive and they involve a ton of investment. And I think that's the simple answer.
As an example, Jay points to LNG Canada. It just opened. Its first tankers full of liquefied natural gas just left from Kitimat. And yeah, it did take some serious money to get that project off the ground.
It actually involved $60 billion in one single project coming into the country. We had capacity to do about 10 of these projects. We've only done one. So if you think about it, the foreign direct investment that's brought in and the economic benefits that it's creating in the country are so large. And the productivity gains that come because of that are equally large.
Ottawa is promising to speed up the approval process for major projects like that, so decisions are made within 2 years. But only if they're deemed to be in the national interest. So, what qualifies as nation building? Well, that's more open to interpretation. The feds say a project needs to benefit the economy, help Indigenous peoples, contribute to clean growth, and strengthen Canada's autonomy. Ottawa won't be paying for these projects, but it could give them a little kick. A new road, debt financing, whatever it takes to get building.
If I was the Prime Minister, I would be walking around every day, with a list in my jacket pocket of the top 20 projects. Where are they situated? What's causing them stopgaps? And then what do I need to move them forward?
Nation building is a great turn of phrase. It's galvanizing. It puts us on a wartime footing against a shared adversary. But cracks are already forming. Critics look at Bill C-5 and they see project approvals getting rushed and trampling on the environment. First Nations worry their interests could get railroaded. But Ottawa says it wants this to happen. And people like Chris Avery at the Port of Churchill don't want to waste this moment.
When I think about what I'm doing and I think about my kids and what legacy we all leave behind for our kids, I think this will be a great set of nation-building infrastructure that will benefit generations to come. And we're just at the starting point right now.
The idea of nation building can sound grandiose, like Pierre Burton writing about the last spike. But Chris thinks we could start small. A new wharf here, a rail spur there. And before you know it, you've built something big. Before we go, do you have a question about business or the economy that's been bugging you? In the past, you've asked us all shapes and sizes of questions. Why does half the country drink milk from bags? Can we handle the national debt? Let us know what's on your mind, and we'll take a crack at answering it. Our number is 1-866-550-COST. That's 1-866-550-2678. Or email costofliving@cbc.ca. The show is based in Calgary. The Cost of Living is produced by Danielle Nerman, Blair Sanderson, and Jennifer Keane, with help from Jeff Kynock. I'm Paul Haberstrood. Thanks for listening.